Hello, guys. Welcome to Lessons from the Screen. In today's episode, we're going to talk about this movie called Castaway, which has been, I guess, a staple, a favorite among the travel enthusiast community. And today with me, the guest is Srinivas Kulkarni.
What's up? What's up?
He's a good old friend of mine. He himself is a travel enthusiast, a survival junkie that he was just telling me like 2 minutes ago. So,
Yeah.
Srinivas, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So Yash, one of the reasons why I decided to come on and to choose this movie specifically is obviously because of this love for two things I have: travel and minimalism, of course. Travel because obviously I've been to over 300 destinations across the country, particularly Himalayas, and I've been into travel blogging. I blog. I used to blog often. Now blogging has become podcasting. I've recently launched this podcast called Travel Tales in the Time of Corona. Check it
Go
out on
check it out,
Spotify.
guys. Go check it out. Links in the
Yeah.
description or wherever your podcast platform keeps it.
Yeah. So because I am into travel, I love traveling. I've been traveling for a while. I've watched practically a bunch of travel movies, and we'll talk about more. I can recommend a few as well for people who don't, who haven't been into travel movies as much. But yeah, one of the reasons why I decided to come on do this particular movie is because it's close to my heart from a travel standpoint. Of course, it's one of the best travel movies, but more from a survival drama that it is. And you know
Mhm.
um, like there is this whole aspect of life I've been living for a while now of minimalism, like at my apartment also, if you'll see, there's barely any furniture or any materialistic things that
You can see
I
that
like to
it's quite
hold.
a clean wall behind you.
Yeah. So that's one. I mean, I always try to be light as possible in life as well, and that's one thing. From a survivalist standpoint, one thing I've always done is read up a little bit about how to live a self-sustainable life. I've taken up organic farming as well a few years back. So eventually, that's my aspiration of being
Mhm.
in this in the mountains, living a quiet life with a with my own farm. So all those things attracted me to a lot of learnings which I've taken up on the survivalism and minimalism standpoint. So
Mhm.
this movie is in itself, like the best in terms of uh, I mean, there are many other movies which also fall in this category. Another one is The Long Walk. It's also based on a book, but
Mhm.
primarily this movie falls in that category because a modern day man gets stuck in an island, self isolating like all of us are, except he doesn't have anybody to talk to other than a
His
volleyball.
volleyball friend. Yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah,
volleyball
yeah.
which he names, I mean, Wilson, of course. So it's very interesting, it's close to my heart, so that's one of the reasons why I decided to come on. And yeah, let's talk about what makes this movie the great movie it has been
Sure.
reviewed as by a lot of critics, but at the same time, why it's close to my heart. So yeah.
Sure. Before we get started about the movie, why don't you tell me about how are you passing time in quarantine? What are you doing? How is your quarantine going?
Well, quarantine is going good. One of the good things about this quarantine is, it's kind of the best time to catch up on all those things that were on our bucket list, so to speak. At
Agreed.
least the ones that you can do by staying in. I mean, my bucket list is larger in terms of traveling across the world, but I don't know
Mhm.
what happens to that. We'll know soon. But I've been
Yeah.
spending some time at home. Of course, work from home continues. That's definitely there. It's routine Monday through Friday.
Mhm. Mhm.
Weekends, or even the time that I save in traveling to work, to and fro, I've decided to make like a quarantine task list. A few things that
Okay.
are on there, or which are part of my routine, of course: meditation, working out, and reading up stuff, watching TV shows, and all of that. But
Mhm.
besides that, I also decided that, hey, let me give my farming bit a little bit of a try. So I've been
Yeah. How's
planting
your
a few.
farming going?
Pretty good. In fact, I've planted a few uh, A few crops. Okra is one of them. Tomatoes is about to fruit soon. Then yeah, I've been experimenting with a little bit of wheatgrass. It's the easiest
Okay.
one to actually make, and once you get the wheatgrass, you could actually grind it and have like a drink, which is very good for your health as well.
I think
So
the first
farming is one
question
thing.
that okay, I think the first question anybody would have, like at least I had when I heard about farming, organic farming, was we live in Mumbai, like we live in like tall skyscrapers. We have like, where am I supposed to farm?
Yeah, well, I luckily have a little bit of space in my balcony. So I've been doing that for a couple of years, just that hadn't been actively doing it. Once in a while, I get these, bursts of farming. So I kind of do it then. But this time I was like, hey, let me just do it. In fact, I did make a whole meal out of one of the crops,
Wow.
bhindi or okra as they call it.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that on your Instagram, I think.
So yeah, so that happened. So it's like from the balcony farm to the kitchen. And it is in times like these, if you don't have groceries, you grow your own, so to speak. That's one thing. That's one thing
Yeah.
I've been doing to learn something new. And I'm taking up some online courses as well.
Okay.
Some things that will be very much along the lines of what I wanted to do or what I want to do in the future. So one of the course that I'm taking on is amateur radio. I don't know if you're aware of this.
No, I'm not.
So there's this is a club actually across the world. In India, also in Bombay, there is a ham radio club. So eventually, that's been my aspiration. So what ham radios do, or ham radio jockeys, or whatever ham radio operators I would call, are they have their own device. They are licensed to have their own radio device. That radio
Okay.
device works on a specific frequency where you can actually collaborate and talk to people. It's like one of the most important devices in times like these, whether it's disaster, whether it's pandemics, whether it is any sort of problems. Then these licensed ham radio operators come to the fore by communicating and keeping lines of communication off, or open. For
Okay.
example, if 2611 or for 26/7 happened, when there was too much of flooding, phone lines went down, these radio operators can actually communicate with the authorities and be helpful to give information, relay information, and pass it on.
Okay. Okay.
Of course, everybody has Wi-Fi and Twitter and whatnot nowadays, but if that goes down as well, this analog piece of information always stays. So that's one course I'm studying on Udemy. And the other thing I'm doing is podcasting. I've
Yeah.
started my own podcast. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to do. It's called
Mhm.
Travel Tales in the Time of Corona. That podcast is basically my travel stories, some interesting, inspiring tales of people I've met across the country.
Mhm.
And I've launched a couple of episodes, recording a few this weekend.
Mhm.
That's on Spotify, Google
Yeah.
Podcasts, or any other podcasting platforms. Uh, Travel Tales in the Time of Corona. So
Mhm.
that's been keeping me
Great,
busy,
great,
so to
great,
speak.
great, great, great. Hope you also got it on iTunes.
iTunes, I'm still figuring out. I don't know yet.
I, uh, I think actually you should get it on iTunes
Yeah, it's good
because the
viewership.
last time that's the mistake that I did. I did get it on iTunes,
Uh-huh.
and the thing is, right now, 87% of my traffic comes from iTunes.
Okay, I'll
In
keep
fact, a
that in mind.
global
I'll
on yeah, on a global average, like 90-ish% traffic comes from iTunes for all
okay.
podcasts.
I
So
should I should take your help on that for sure.
I
We'll
actually
connect.
didn't do much. I just put it on Anchor, and Anchor took care of
Oh
all
yeah,
of it.
then I also use Anchor, so it should be on iTunes. I just haven't got the time to check because I've not been logged into my iTunes account for some
So
reason.
I'll tell you the catch is even I wasn't able to get it on iTunes for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did some Googling and I figured out a lot of people have having the problem. The solution is go to podcastconnect.itunes something
Mm-hmm.
and just manually copy paste the RSS feed from
Oh yeah.
Anchor to that. And then it
Correct,
works.
correct.
So what happens is iTunes might send some kind of feedback to Anchor and
Hmm.
they may or may not be
No,
able
I
to.
had the same problem with Google Podcasts before. Yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Just manually submitting your podcast gives you I think iTunes does a great job of giving you feedback on what
Hmm.
kind of changes they want you to make to the podcast.
Interesting. Cool. I will. That's on my uh, to-do list again.
All right. Cool, cool, cool. Let's come to the movie then, Castaway.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
did you watch this movie the first time? Castaway.
First time, I can't even remember when I watched this movie. It's been a long, long time. I think I watched it on Star Movies, if I remember correctly. It was
Okay,
airing on
okay.
Star Movies, so must be about 10 years ago at least.
Oh, wow, wow. So what is
I
this
mean, like
emotional
when
connect
it
that you
came
have?
about around the same time, maybe a little bit
Okay,
after that,
okay.
probably.
Okay. So what is this emotional connect do you have? You said it's one of your favorite movies. How come? Like
So
what makes it?
one of the reasons for that is though we don't have enough screen time with Helen Hunt. Two of my favorite actors in Hollywood are in that movie. Tom Hanks, obviously, he leads the movie. It's basically on his shoulders. But Helen Hunt as well. She's an actor who I have really admired. Like her movies, one of the other movie that I'm really fond of is As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson
Okay.
and Greg Kinnear, I think. So she's been one of my favorite actresses in Hollywood. So that's one. The other aspect, obviously, is I've been to the mountains. For the last 11 years I've been going every year to the mountains in the Himalayas, and I've always aspired to live that sustainable life. I've taken a lot of treks in the mountains, and I know what goes in uh, you know uh, being in a zone where you have limited resources, limited supplies. You are kind of one with nature, of course, and you're trying to live your best in terms of whatever you have at that point in time. And there have been situations where I've also been stranded. We've taken a trek where we've, like, a group of people, we got stranded in heavy rains and we had nowhere to go, and we just had to camp in a cave
Okay.
for overnight. And I really understand how that situation could be and what you could do. Like, we were in a cave with rats. Luckily we had some food with us, so we even, like, we made fire with, I mean, of course, thankfully we had lighters. We did not have to make fire out of
Okay.
and the old caveman style.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I relate to all of those aspects of life in general. Traveling, of course, the rugged terrains and the mountain life and all of that. Though this is on the coast, I relate to the whole aspect of minimalism, survivalism, and that's something which made me watch this movie, I think, a bunch of times.
Okay, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. I actually saw the movie yesterday for the first time.
Okay.
Not much of a traveling guy, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like the first, I listened to
Mm.
that episode of yours where you were like rejoicing the fact that you were made for the quarantine or the lockdown because you don't like to go out, meet with people, stay on your own. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why you would relate to this movie for sure. Isolation.
um, I think I guess we'll get more into depth about this when we get to that part of the
Okay.
movie.
Okay.
But yeah, I really think that in times like these, quarantine right now, or when you are stranded on an island like that,
Hmm.
or you're stranded in some other desert or some desolated part of the world, I think the most important part is what is your self-talk? How do you deal with it yourself? Because
Yeah.
uh, in our regular lives, if there's problem, we always have an excuse. We can go out and drink. We can go to a club and I don't know, hang out with friends or whatever. We can do things to distract ourselves. But when you are in quarantine, when you are stranded on an island or something, you don't have those options. You can't be
Yeah.
like, oh, this island is crazy. I think I'll get a drink, man. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It
True.
comes
True.
that's when things get real.
Yeah, I mean, this is that, like, if you've seen the whole change that he has gone through, like, I mean, as an actor, he went through that change. Obviously, we've seen many actors do that over time, whether it's Amir Khan, whether it's Christian Bale, or Tom Hanks for that matter. Like the whole transformation of his body that happens because
True,
he starves
true.
or has very, very little to eat in that island.
Right.
All of those things can be shown so much, and so many things in our life that we've been taking for granted, or we've been thinking that, hey, listen, this is something which I definitely need in times like these, whether it's a lockdown or whether you are cast away. You
Yeah.
realize how little you need in life to even get by. And of course, it doesn't mean that you stop living your life, but it's just
True.
the whole
True.
aspect
True.
of how you as a human being have conditioned yourself to luxuries and materialism, which essentially is not needed, and you truly understand value of life, so to speak. And
I
that's
agree.
very well showcased in this movie, I feel. I mean, the whole movie is about that, so to speak.
I agree. I agree. So I think one of the questions I have, the just
Hmm.
sheer curiosity, is: you think it was a product placement for FedEx?
I don't know, could be, maybe
So here's
not.
the thing. Okay, the way the movie starts, it really seems like a good product placement, and I don't mind. Okay,
Yeah,
let's be honest. Like we know, if you wanna get Tom Hanks, it's not like Tom Hanks is gonna be a inexpensive actor. You have to pay him a lot, and I'm sure like making feature films, there's a lot of expenses, and there's nothing wrong in product placement.
possible. I'm sure that happens
But
quite
then,
often.
but then the FedEx plane crashes. I'm like, wait a minute, that is against every rule of product placement. Like, I don't know if
Yeah,
somebody does product placement for, I don't know, this Starbucks tumbler. The idea is to show that the Starbucks tumbler is amazing. It won't make sense if
yeah,
this breaks. So
yeah.
uh, the FedEx plane
Mm.
crashes, and I'm like,
Not like how they did it in the Game of Thrones episode, Starbucks.
oh, the
I wouldn't
Starbucks
call that
thing.
a product placement. So possible that this might be not a product placement, and they might have just chosen FedEx as part of the script and character. I'm sure they might have had their reasons why it could have been something else, but I think it's completely up to the script writer, the story writer who wrote
Agreed,
that.
agreed, 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 agreed. I also love how much the movie in the beginning emphasizes on clock, time. This guy is like always running out of time. Um,
Mm, mm.
and I think being in that industry, being in the delivery and packaging industry, it could be very well true. Like, come on, before the pandemic happened, it was very much possible to order something from Amazon before 12 at night and have it arrive before 11 in the morning.
Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that kind of delivery doesn't happen easily, man. I'm sure that requires a lot of
Yeah.
people running around the clock.
Yeah, which is exactly what he showcases, right? In the beginning of the movie itself, they've shown how he's obsessed with time, and all of a sudden he's in a situation where time has no meaning, and he
Yeah.
he tries his best to kind of carve out. He first and foremost he looks at his watch. The watch not
Mm-hmm.
being waterproof, of course, is shut. And interestingly, in the beginning, he talks about it to his fiance Helen. Yeah, that I will always keep it on Minnesota time, or I think Memphis time. I don't know. Yeah, Kelly
Memphis,
time.
yeah.
Basically, is what he says, Memphis time. So how that aspect changes completely, and it's interesting the way story is written. That he sets the watch at a certain time, and it stays that forever. But the
Yeah.
time has basically come to a standstill, whereas the world outside is moving on and living its own life, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's very interesting because this is one guy who's obsessed with time, deliveries on time and whatnot, but eventually he has to give in to the nature and the run by the clocks which are part of the nature, whether when the sun rises, the sun sets. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting metaphor that is explored in the movie.
I agree. Talking about the watch not being waterproof, there's quite a bit of text in the movie, which is it's kind of out of place, out of whack. Like, I don't know, it's very unrelatable for me. It's not out of
It's a
place, it's very much in the movie.
1999. Yeah. No, I think the movie set in 95.
Because when the dead body of a co-pilot arrives at the beach,
Yes,
he
yeah,
buries it
he
and
writes the
writes down.
yeah
So it is very much possible that
1950 to 95.
he writes 1995 on the tombstone,
Mm.
which means it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
very much possible that
yeah,
the
yeah.
movie was shot in 1995.
The movie wasn't shot in 95, but the movie was shot in across 2 years, I think 97 or 98, 97 to 99. And I think
Mhm.
while the movie was in production, filmmakers used the same cast and made What Lies Beneath. So yeah, that's when the movie was made. But interestingly, the technology that he uses, and he's driven by all of those technologies, and then they all become obsolete in a sense that if he
Yeah.
had even one of these pieces of technologies, I don't know what he would do in an island. There's an interesting joke that was made by the director. He was asked
Uh-huh.
that so that in the story or in the plot, for listeners who haven't watched or who watched the movie but who don't remember this part, there's this one package that Tom Hanks waits to deliver, and he never opens. And the whole theory behind that, of course, which as like I've read a few reviews as well, is the fact that that particular package he does not open because he believes that he will go get out of this island and deliver that package himself. So it's kind of his hope or his beam of hope, so to speak, that keeps him going. That's one purpose that he has in life. It resonates to that one another book I've read by Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. That book is
Mhm.
about this one guy who survives the Nazi concentration camps in World War II, because his
Uh-huh.
sole purpose obviously was to survive and see the light of the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and be alive, and he survives that particular era. So
Mhm.
there's this hope that he has to go out there and deliver that package. So the joke was, he said, people
Mhm.
asked him, nobody knows what was in the package, but there is some
Okay.
theory
Okay.
around it. But the director was asked what was in that package,
Uh-huh.
and the joke he made was obvious. I mean, you could never know what it was, but he's like, a satellite phone was there in that package, which he never opened. I mean, imagine that, a satellite phone, he
That
having a
that would
satellite
have
phone and
sucked
not
real
using it.
bad.
Yeah, of course.
um,
So yeah,
yeah,
but
but
I like
anyway,
I like the way the movie is filmed,
I actually found
the
some pieces of tech which are
location.
very interesting. I jotted it down yesterday.
Hmm.
So, um,
Like what?
yeah, like watch. In the plane when he wakes up, he takes off his watch before washing his face,
Yeah.
which is something I've just never done. Like I'm too young to own a watch that was not waterproof. It's like I personally own
Oh yeah.
a very inexpensive Titan watch. I wear it. I
Hmm.
have worn it in the rain. I've worn it while running. I've worn it in the ocean. I've worn it in the pool, and it's
Hmm.
almost 3 years old and it hasn't died on me. And I'm
Yeah.
really blown away by the fact that a watch that didn't even cost 1,000 rupees hasn't died on me yet.
Well, well, I relate to what he's doing. Obviously, there was a time when I used to be a watch salesman, and I
Uh-huh.
knew for a fact that if you take that watch in the washroom, he's gonna die for sure. So I know how those days were. And the pager, I still remember, like I had a pager way back in 1999. I
Mhm.
used to like, actually my mom had it, but usually I used to play around with it. You call up people, you page them, and then the message comes to them, and they call back. The whole works. You know what I mean?
Okay. I have
So
actually never
yeah, I
owned a
think
pager, as you might guess. I
yeah.
have never owned a pager in my life. Also, what was the other piece of tech? Oh yeah. During the Christmas dinner, they have a conversation, and then he and his fiance they both go in the room and they pull out their diaries for
Hmm.
changing their plan, their schedule. And I'm like,
Schedule.
I have
No Google Calendar then.
yeah. like whatever calendar, man. Like I don't know whatever calendar app you use. I've never used a diary to legit like make schedules or something. I only use them to write notes or to-do list.
Hmm.
And that too,
Yeah, yeah,
actually, I
yeah.
have a lot
That's
of friends who don't use that as well.
our parents used all of those, and we know why.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah. So, what do you think about the overall, like the moments that he has of success, small, little, moments of success he has on that island? Well, I think that whole journey of him progressing from the fact that okay, it can be in a couple of days I might just get rescued or whatever, to knowing the fact that I'm here for a long time, like
I
how
think
he
that's
survives, what he does.
I think that is where the movie, according to me, missed out a big opportunity. The fourth
Mhm.
wall break, or the realization, in simpler terms, the realization of okay, the help is not going to come. I need to build my own raft and I need to go out. I need to go out and look for help. That moment of realization is not big enough or is not shown as big and huge as it could have been, in my opinion.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I
Because
mean,
I
I
think
think he's waiting for something or the other. It seems as though he's waiting, or like he tries in the initial stages by writing help on the beach, then making a whole
right,
series of
right.
those wooden, I mean, those three logs that he makes help out of. Then for some reason, meaning I think the reason why he even decided to um, actually light a fire was probably because he didn't want to eat raw food or raw fish or whatever. I think
I agree.
that could be at the back of his mind, because when he does end up, like rejoicing the whole moment of lighting or creating fire, he does nicely barbecues or whatever. Like he makes his meat to taste a little better, I would say,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's got plenty of salt in the sea for sure. Doesn't need to worry about that. But
True.
I think that moment of his was very interesting. And like you said, right, they it's not like shown as though that he has to desperately get out, because he's made acceptance after a point in time that I've tried everything. Even in the middle of the movie or early parts, he sees some light. Maybe it's a ship which is
Yeah,
far
yeah,
off.
yeah.
Who knows? It could also be the ship which is at the end of that search grid that they had shown, like what
Maybe.
Helen Hunt shows him at the end.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he cannot reach out to them because they can't see his tiny flashlight or even hear him. He just goes on yelling. So yeah, so I think that's when he accepts probably that I gotta wait
I agree.
for a long time here, until the time when he sees that Bakersfield, I think it's a door of sorts from the plane that comes across the shore, and then he realizes that what, I can make a raft out of it, or it could make like a sail. It's probably for aerodynamics that he uses it. And that's when he
True.
realizes that what, I got to get off this island and I can do this as well. So
I agree.
that's,
I agree.
until that time, I think that's probably part of the script, and that's how they've shown it.
I also think the part when he climbs up on the top of the mountain for the first time and he looks
Mm-hmm.
around and gets a scale of how small the island is and how it's completely inhabited.
Mm.
I think that
Correct,
is
correct,
when it
correct.
really hits him hard. Like you can see on his
Mm.
face, like it,
Mm.
like that is the
Mm.
face of a man who just realized that he has been far, like really far.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
because
think that is.
yeah, in the initial stage, he's like, help, help, anybody there, whatever. In fact, when the coconuts start falling, he thinks there's somebody or there's some animal or whatever. That's the kind of perspective they've given us. The whole story is kind of that way. But eventually, of course, it's a spiritual journey more than just his journey of escaping. Spiritual journey of how you know he introspects about what he's done in life, or what what are certain things. Very interestingly though, in movies like these, or if you've seen Lost, the TV show, a majority of the times you will find the movie or the storyline going into flashbacks. Surprisingly, that has not happened.
Yeah, there's
The movie
very
keeps
little
us
flashbacks.
engaged. Yeah. No, I think practically none. I suppose once he's landed on the island, I don't think any flashback is there.
Yeah,
So
there
it's
isn't. There
it's
isn't.
kind of there is,
Mhm.
okay, like, but very
No,
little,
there
so to
isn't.
speak.
That's what I'm saying.
Keep it.
There is none.
There isn't. Okay. Yeah. So the point of that is the whole aspect of how the movie makers want to take you through that journey of you know living that life with him, so that you don't have to actually go back into flashbacks. Or very little of his life, even before the movie and after the movie, which you spoke about early on, that that is something which is not from a storyline standpoint. I would, if I'm a first time viewer, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I guess this whole movie is about him in that island, so I don't really need to know much about him, or his early on life, or the life that
I
happened
think the
between him
first, I remember very well, 32 minutes is the mark when he
and
washes up on the beach.
yeah,
Okay. And I think those 32 minutes, first 32 minutes of the movie are very well spent. It helps us as viewer build a lot of empathy for Tom Hanks, for the character.
yeah, yeah,
Because when you see, like, I don't know, Man versus Wild, Bear Grylls, it often
yeah,
starts with a disclaimer that, hey, he knows what he's doing. He's been in the army or whatever, and though it is made to look like he's alone, he's not alone. There's a camera crew with him.
of
There is
course.
help just standing by. So don't do this
Mm.
at home. And then like he's
Yeah,
dropped in the middle of nowhere with a helicopter, and then it starts. So what happens in
yeah,
that
right.
is you don't build any empathy for Bear Grylls. Okay, anything but opposite. Anything but opposite. Like you are like, dude, he knows his stuff. He's a pro.
No, it's a different
On
format.
yeah. I get it. Like that is completely educational. Whereas this one, in the movie, because of those first 30-32 minutes, you build a lot of empathy for this guy. You really feel for him, and I think that's an important part in the movie.
Mm. True. Like as the movie progresses, I think one of the interesting things that comes across as very,
Mhm.
very gripping and stark is his relationship with Wilson. I mean, everybody knows about that. That's like the most talked about thing in the whole movie community, or people who are talking about this movie. Everybody does talk about his relationship with Wilson and how that pans out. That's very emotional, and that's very interesting, because if you are in a situation like that, like, of
I
course,
agree.
you would definitely end up doing, making your own imaginary friend of sorts. That's definitely
Mhm.
bound to happen.
True, true that. But as good as the movie is, I think they have definitely taken some creative liberties with things like so before the plane crashes, when the plane is about to crash, a pilot stands up and tells Tom Hanks to sit down. Or, I don't know, he's shouting something, but there's too much noise. I couldn't figure out what he was trying to tell. But he's trying to tell Tom Hanks something about sit down, put on seatbelt or something. He was
He's
like,
trying to say safety, put on safety, get your this thing, the vest, and
yeah.
I think he also gives him the boat, like the lifeboat that
Mhm.
he
But
inflates
it's
later
surprising,
on.
So this is when the plane jerks and this guy's head gets hit in the roof of the plane, and then he's lying down
Hmm.
there, and I'm like, doesn't make sense. Why would a pilot
Yeah,
stand
no, but
up?
it's not an ordinary plane, right? It's a cargo plane, FedEx plane. They have their own liberties for doing all of
I
these things. I
agree,
mean, you
but
could.
I think the laws of aviation are the same, and I also think a pilot in a situation like this, I don't think he would get
Yeah.
up from his seat and be like, "Hey, you sit down, you put on your life vest." That's like, I don't know. That's definitely some creative
No,
liberty.
if you notice,
Heck,
there are
I
four
wouldn't.
co-pilots, three co-pilots and one pilot in that.
Yeah, I think I don't understand aviation well enough, but I found that very interesting. Why four pilots?
Yeah.
Like it would make sense if they had two sets. Okay, there's like two captain, first pilot, and a flight engineer, and there is this another set of captain, first pilot, and flight engineer who would take over when the first crew would go to sleep.
But there are, right? There are. If you see carefully, there are two. So there are two pilots, and there's one who's injured and he's fallen down, and then one sitting on the other side. So there are actually four people. There are two, like one pilot, like two pilots and two co-pilots in there. Yeah, but I
I don't know.
think
It
that's very
seemed like an
little
old
minor
plane that needed
detail.
three people to fly it. I'm not sure. It
Yeah, well,
seemed like it's an old plane that needs three people to fly. If I'm not
it's
wrong, these
it's a
days there's
cargo
no
plane,
planes.
right?
I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Like let's say even we don't know well about enough about pilots and planes to know how many
Yeah,
pilots they needed. Other creative
possibly, possibly.
liberty, yeah, another creative liberty that I noticed is the plane goes down. Okay,
Hmm.
uh, Tom Hanks comes up because he's Tom Hanks. He's not supposed to die in the movie, so not that early on. So he comes up
Yeah.
with a boat, and the engine is still spinning behind him. There's like a lot of jet engine noise when he comes out,
Oh
and
yeah,
few
yeah,
minutes
yeah.
later you see that there's
The
an engine spinning
propeller.
behind him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, as far as I have studied about airplane crashes, one of the first things that turn off are the jet engines because they are literal gas guzzlers.
But in this, he does not even turn off, right? What happens is it crashes and it goes nosedives. It nosedives actually.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
So what happens in what as far as I know, like again, I'm no expert, but in a plane crash, the first thing that automatically turns off is a jet engine because they just need a lot of fuel. And the moment the plane
Hmm.
crashes, the fuel supplies turn off. The jet engine just cannot sustain itself. It's like
Hmm.
car engine would sustain for like a few seconds, like 30, 40 seconds, even if you turn off the ignition. A jet engine just consumes so much fuel that it cannot. That's what I know. Like I could be wrong. So
Maybe,
I thought
maybe.
that was kind of creative liberty. Also, the jet engine just blows up like a few seconds later. I'm like, generally engines don't blow up. Like if you see the wreck of planes that have crashed in real, like you will see jet engines are so robust. Like the core generally ends up at the bottom of the ocean in one piece. So I found that like
So
maybe they took some creative liberties there.
possibly, possibly. See, the thing is, interestingly, I saw this meme that was floating around and
Okay.
very relevant to the COVID times as well. One
Okay.
thing I will never do is travel with Tom Hanks because in this movie, he, of course, the plane crashes. Then there is Apollo 13, which was also a
Oh
failed
yeah.
mission. Then there is obviously a terminal where he struggles in a in
Yeah,
a
he'll
airport,
probably get you killed.
and
Don't
then
travel with him. That's, I guess, the takeaway.
yeah, and in one of these other movies, he's captured by the pirates, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
one
Oh, yes, yes.
he almost crashes a flight. So yeah, he's in all of those.
Yeah, so I guess
Uh,
that's the podcast for today, guys. Don't travel with Tom Hanks. That's your takeaway.
yes,
But
for
other
sure.
than that, I think the movie is really good. They had a lot of great concepts. As I was
Yeah.
telling you on the call before this, I think they tried to touch on a little too many things and ended up not being able to do a great job at all
Hmm.
of them. Like I think the first, so I think I can break the movie in four quadrants. The first quadrant is pre shit, is before he takes off on the plane, before the plane
Yeah.
crashes
Before
and everything.
this.
The
Yeah.
second quadrant is when the plane crashes. He washes off the shore and he writes help, and he's still fairly optimistic and everything. The third quadrant is when you just see many years later he has long hair and everything and grown beard and he's trying to make the raft. And then the fourth and final quadrant is when he gets back to land, when he gets back to home, and he figures out the world has moved on. His fiance is now married to someone else and everything. Uh,
Yeah, she actually faints when she comes to know that he's back or he's
oh
alive.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That is like wow.
Oh my
And
god.
that's
Yeah,
such
yeah.
effortless acting, I would say. She just drops on the floor like nobody's business. I think,
Oh my god.
the
I'm
other
sure,
things
like,
that
if
I
you are in,
really
like, mhm.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, like if you are in her situation, you would be like, "What is this? Ekta Kapoor serial? Like, are you me here? What is happening?"
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's so. I mean, that was one part of their relationship. I mean, yeah, it's like you can't do anything about it. Of course, her husband, who's also his dentist, so to speak, he comes
Small
and
world, I
tells
guess.
him, small world, yeah. But yeah, it's possible. You see these kind of things happening in real life for sure. This is nothing. But I mean, it's shown right that she wanted to come and meet him, but her husband,
Stops her. Yeah.
tries not to get him to meet because of the emotions involved and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
probably a little bit of anxiety on his part. But
Yeah, a little
what
bit
I
of
find,
maybe.
I don't know, insecurity, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for as well.
But if you look at how he goes back to her house on a rainy night and she's like awake and waiting to meet him, and I think, I feel, yes, in a way they got closure, because it's beyond the part where, even when like, first off, it's a little awkward when he goes in and then he just
Mhm.
talks to her about her past, whether she actually became a doctor or not, or got her
Yeah,
PhD or not.
yeah.
But the most interesting part is when he gets his car and he's about to leave, and the whole genuineness of about, this is something which is foreboded very well, and
I agree.
kind of set up before, when he says, "I'll be right back." And that kind of is
Mhm.
used at the end when she says, "You said you'll be right back." And then he's like,
Yeah,
"No, I'm
yeah.
sorry." It's
Mhm.
this kind of closure. I think that is a very, very interesting moment in that particular movie,
I think I loved
because
that
of
scene as
course
well.
beyond that also they kind of she comes back and tells him that, I love you, you're the love of my life, or whatever. That part of the
Mhm.
movie was very like, that gives them the closure that they probably
I
he
agree.
wanted, she
I
wanted.
agree. I agree. I
Right.
agree.
But what was your moment in the movie that is very like sticks with you sort of moment?
The kind of movement that really stick with me is one of the. I think I have a few. One of them is definitely the time when he goes up on the top of the mountain for the first time, and he finds out how
Hmm.
small, desolate that island is, and there is no help coming from that island at least.
Okay.
That is one.
Okay.
Um, the second is I think the scene you were telling me when he goes to her place at night and
Hmm.
she tells him that you're the love of my life, etc., etc., everything. Then they get in the car and then he tells her, "Listen, you'll have to go." I think that's a very touching scene and a very pragmatic thing to do in that situation.
True.
That yeah, I
Can't do
know we
anything
love
about
each
it, but
other,
yeah.
everything, but yeah, now you're married, you have kids, and it would be a rat's nest for those kids, to be honest. More than anyone else, if they both came back together, like it would be the biggest mind blow for the kids. They would be like, I don't know. That would be an
I don't think
absolute.
that's gonna happen ever.
No,
Interesting, interesting.
when you think from the perspective when these kids grow up and everything, it would be a real mess for them. It would be a lot of emotional drama,
Hmm.
a lot of instability for these kids. So, and
Yeah,
and
it's kind
also
of
the
like This Is
families in
Us.
general, the families involved. If you see,
No, I don't know if you've seen this TV show, This Is Us. Have you?
no, I haven't. No, no.
You should watch it. It is very complicated in this whole aspect of relationships between parents, kids, divorcees, husband, wife. There's a whole mix of emotions and how it's handled in a very mature way.
Okay.
Like I could see Tom Hanks, Helen Hunt, and that guy, I forgot his name, he's a very good actor.
Dhananjay.
Their like as characters, their future life could be very much like This Is Us, where he'd probably go meet the kids or whatever. Like they'll still be friends. I feel he may not move on completely afterwards as a character for sure.
I see. I see.
So
I
what
see.
I felt was, to me, one of the most touching or most intriguing moments in this whole movie. Of course, there are quite a few of such. One is obviously very interesting, not so like heart throbbing or deep as you would like to call, is obviously the time when he discovers the ability to make fire. How he
Yeah.
also gets to that process of the simple thing as using an action that is easier for him rather than rolling the twig or whatever, like the bark of a tree, so to speak. But then when he creates fire, he's like, see what I have created in terms of metaphorical nature and all of that. But at the same time, one of the key things in this movie, or the key moments in this movie, is when Wilson drifts away. You know, there is this whole aspect of his own survival versus going out there to protect
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody who, to him, it's become like he's a family member in a sense.
True. 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 True.
He
True.
tries to go and get Wilson when the volleyball is floating closer to him, but
But
as
as
he
it drifts
realizes
away.
that he has to let go of that raft, he decides not to take that move, because his
True.
life is more important to him than a volleyball. But to him, it's not even a volleyball. It could probably be his pet or his friend or whatever,
I agree.
emotionally,
I agree.
metaphorically. So
Also, I
that
have this
moment was
question: how
very.
does a volleyball grow like bushes out of itself? Like, how did that happen?
No, he just plugs in some twigs and makes like this nice dreadlock hair. If you've seen, that happens after he's grown that kind of a dreadlock and that kind of beard and all. It doesn't happen initially. So
That
he's
brings me up
trying
two
to.
points actually. That actually brings
Yeah.
me two things. One is so these are the kind of things that I think if we got to see, it would have helped us connect with the character much more. Things like when he must have cut the volleyball and put those shrubs in there
Hmm.
to simulate a dreadlock. I think
Hmm.
being able to see those
Yeah,
things would
but
have made it more
it's show
relatable.
don't tell, right? So it doesn't need to be there necessarily.
So that are the
How he
points
does
where
it,
I think
maybe
the
it's a
movies
directorial
the movie
choice, I
went too
guess.
fast.
Yeah.
I think those are the points where I think the movie went just a little too fast for my taste.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
and then there are points where the movie went a little too slow. Like at the point where the ship is going by and he gets discovered. That scene just keeps going forever. That scene just keeps going. There's a ship, it crosses, it comes in the view, it starts going, it keeps going all the way till the deck of the ship is visible. I'm like, he got cute. I get the point.
No,
It
no,
doesn't
but
have to be a 40-second scene.
yeah, but you can't be like, oh, there's a ship, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's not in that zone, and that's the whole beauty of it, right? You have that. There's a moment of thrill created, that whether this ship will just pass him by, or whether it's the end of the movie, or where he'll actually get discovered, what's gonna happen, how it's gonna happen. Yeah, they could have actually shown somebody, and then that person, like, getting him up and what. They did not choose to, but that's okay, I guess. But the whole
So
beauty of
that
it
was
is that whole
because I
thrill.
realized they didn't want to end the movie right there, and I
Yeah.
think that in a way that gave them a power because I saw in the time bar in the seat bar in the bottom
Uh-huh.
how much time is left when the ship is going by him and he's almost passed out. And I saw like a good 30-40 minutes, and I was like, okay, so then there's a huge chance that the ship will just pass him by because this is not the end.
Hmm.
There's still 40 minutes of movie to go.
Yeah, all the more all
So,
the more reason to create that
uh,
mystery
yeah,
from a
yeah, yeah.
story
That
writer's
gave them
point
the
of view.
chance to create the mystery.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I
And
think this.
actually, one more interesting thing you've seen at the end of the movie,
Mhm.
where he just walks by, like everybody's come and met and gone. Maybe he's had his stomach's fill or whatever, but
Mhm.
there is so much of food lying on his table. So much of
Mhm.
food. There's crabs, there's what
Yeah, yeah,
lobster,
yeah. It's
whatnot.
it's such an irony to
Yeah, to his life, and it's like I don't care about all of this anymore because he's heard the news that his fiance is no longer with him. So that's more, on his mind, so to speak.
yeah. Because if you see, I think that was the most that was the thing that hurt him the most. I felt so
Yeah,
through
yeah, of course.
the
When the
movie that
husband comes,
yeah, because throughout the whole time he was on this island and he was lost. Like his only hope was picture of his fiance in that watch. He
hmm,
kept it because the watch wasn't working. There was a picture of her. That's why he kept it. And all of a sudden he comes back and he finds that she has moved on and she's married to someone else now.
yeah, that's devastating for him. But I mean, what did he imagine? It's possibly could have happened anyways. He'd been gone for so long. So yeah, I mean,
True,
what would you expect to happen?
true that, true that. What would you
Yeah, so
expect? But
I think overall it's a very good movie. There are many such actually, which I said before, right? A lot of travel movies, a few travel movies beyond, of course, this movie Castaway. Of course, like Tom Hanks has done Terminal. Tom Hanks has done so many other movies, which sort of borderline travel. But some of the travel movies that I would recommend for sure, is like I think it's about the time I tell you about those recommendations. Definitely must watch,
sure.
which kind of have showcases of some of these elements that are missed out, like you said, or that are somewhere along the lines. Yeah, some are
I think before we
survivalists, some
go
are
there,
non-survivalists.
before
Sorry.
we go there, I think we should before we go there, I think we should
Hmm.
really appreciate the way this movie ends, like the last quadrant that I was telling you about when he
Hmm.
gets back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's beautiful. I think because we as people we expect a very uh, romantic, nice end that people are just waiting for him.
That's
His
not gonna
fiance is
happen.
just waiting for him. They get married and they live happily ever after. Um, and I think it would have taken a lot of courage to
Hmm.
not show that, to instead show what they have shown. The truth. The truth is that if you're gone for, they don't show how long he's gone, right?
Uh, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years. I can't remember.
Yeah, so if you're gone for so long, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years,
2 years at
something,
least, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
depending on his hair and beard, I believe more than that. But whatever. If you're gone for long enough and you have been presumed dead, and they people have done proxy bury, you
4 years,
know,
4 years. I just looked it up.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
gone for
four
4 years.
years. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're presumed dead and people have done a proxy burial for you and everything,
Hmm.
um, yeah, people will move
Damn,
on.
four
Life will move
years.
on.
Cannot
Yeah,
believe
once you
he
come
survived
back,
for 4 years.
that's the truth. People will have moved on.
Strange, but yeah, it's
I
very,
mean,
very.
I think from filmmaking perspective, that would have taken a lot of courage to portray that. Because it's human instinct, right?
Yes.
After you have struggled, you want a sweet romantic end. You want a sweet romantic end. Like that's what we as people do, right? We work all day. And then when we are back
Yeah.
home, we like to cook our favorite food or we like to have our favorite chocolate or something because we believe that is the sweet end that we deserve. But the truth
True.
is, often
True.
you will come home and you won't have the chocolate in the fridge anymore.
Yeah. Somebody else ate it.
So yeah, that's I think that is quite admirable from filmmaking perspective.
Yeah, I think I like the whole aspect of being through that journey, being through that process, being
Mhm.
through like that hope, that survival. That is something which shows across very well. It's given, right?
One thing
It has to
I
happen at the
yeah,
end of the day.
yeah. One thing
So
I
yeah.
noticed throughout the movie is how far technology has come in terms of filmmaking, in terms of camera and audio. Um, at the
Hmm.
beginning of the movie, when the plane crashes and it's raining and there's thunderstorms, you can see the camera struggles. The camera struggles to keep up with all the water droplets that are pouring.
Yeah.
So what happens if you take like the best camera out there even right now and you see, if you have ever seen a scene where there's a lot of confetti being thrown around, you'll see any camera
Mm.
struggling because there's a lot of moving parts in the frame. Same is true with rain. And back then, I'm sure the cameras were not as powerful. I couldn't figure out
Mm.
what the movie was shot on. I think it is film, but it is weird. Like I have seen movies which are shot on film, which look very beautiful.
Mm.
This one doesn't actually. This one has a
Yeah, yeah,
very
you are the expert on that front, so yeah, for sure.
I don't think I'm an expert.
Totally.
I don't know. I saw Godfather lately, like I think
Mm.
a month or 2 months ago. That was definitely shot on film, and it has been. When you look at Godfather, it looks good. Yes, you notice it was shot on film, but it doesn't look like. It looks old, but it doesn't look bad.
It is
Uh,
evergreen, I would say.
yeah, yeah, even from like just looking at it perspective, just a video perspective, it looks really good. The same I can say for Anand. I saw Anand lately, and of course,
Oh,
it doesn't look half as
very
good as
nice.
Godfather. There's no comparison, but it looks really good. The cinematography looks really good. I can see some mistakes, flaws, so to speak, because it was shot on a film. This is not like that. This
That's your domain, man. That's your domain. Like, you know all of these things more
I
for
really
sure, right?
cannot
You would be able to
pinpoint
pick on
why.
these, right? More.
Mhm. I don't know. I cannot exactly pinpoint on what it is or why it is, but you can
Mm.
really see the camera struggling. You can really see the audio struggling at points. In fact, towards
Mm.
the end, when he goes to her home, she takes him in the garage and shows the car of his. It's raining outside, and the audio really struggles. If you paid attention, the rain is very
Mm.
loud, and these guys are not very audible over the rain. Yes, it could be the compression of the platform on which I was watching. I was watching on Plex, so it could
Mm.
be the compression of the platform or whatever. But there are
Maybe.
times, even when there's a rainstorm in the beginning, the plane crashes. The thunder is very loud. The rain is not that loud. Um,
Mm. Yeah, I
you
mean,
can
it's a
see.
1999 movie. So, yeah, definitely.
So I don't know exactly why the camera was struggling so much, but there are points when the camera and audio really struggles, and you can see it. You can see this like they are pushing the limit of what technology can do.
Mm. Possible,
So
possible. Good, man. Good. Yeah, I think we've probably covered most of the stuff about the movie.
yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah. Yeah, I think overall, my personal review is that this definitely is something which is a rewatchable, not just because of the movie and the plot and everything, because of course Tom Hanks. That's one reason why I would rewatch this movie. This
I
movie,
agree.
Shawshank Redemption. Many of
Oh
these
yeah, I
movies are
saw
kind of
Shawshank Redemption lately.
rewatchable.
I think even that is brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you should another travel. If I was gonna say another travel movie, you should definitely watch The Bucket List. That's a very,
Okay.
very interesting movie by Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. Both of them have played a very beautiful.
Okay.
Their roles are amazing. The movie plot line is also very, very interesting. So yeah,
Okay. 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 I see.
cool. I think we're about
What
done.
other
I
movies
also
would you
probably am
recommend?
heading. Sorry. Oh,
What other
other
movies would you?
travel movies. There are a bunch, but I'll recommend a few, like top three. One is, of course, this movie is very interesting from a perspective that, from a travel angle, actually, it's very good because showcases a lot of it's a lot of trekkers. Because I'm into trekking, I like trekking. This is one
Okay.
place in Europe.
Mhm.
People travel trek. It's a pilgrimage actually. They all
Okay.
the way they travel from. I think they travel from some part of south of France all the way, into Spain. It's
Okay.
called
Okay.
Santiago de Compostela, which is basically a pilgrimage trip where basically people travel all the way from France. They'll go walking, they'll stay in hostels and stay around, places nearby on the way. Every day it takes at least 28 days to 30 days to get to that place
Okay.
on your walk,
Okay.
essentially. So this movie is about, I think it's Martin Sheen, Charlie
Mhm.
Sheen's dad, Martin Sheen in that movie, and it's his journey, but it's also his self exploration, because it's basically, I mean, it's not a spoiler. His This is basically a doctor in the US, very famous retired doctor. His son is also a doctor, but his son is a nomad. He wants to travel the world and travel
Okay.
different places. So
Okay.
his son is the one who sets off doing this trail, Santiago de Compostela, and on his
Mhm.
way he dies because something, he gets caught in a cold night, and he
Oh.
basically uh, dies. And then this guy comes to pick his body, and then it's his thought process of, this guy died midway, so let me complete his journey. So that's the whole movie about, and how he meets other
Okay.
interesting travelers, and everybody's struggling with their own personal battles while on the way, and how
Mhm.
beautifully it is explored in this particular movie. So that's one
Okay.
definitely I would recommend. And bunch of others, of course, there are. Map for Saturday is a very interesting documentary. It's about this one guy who takes about 2 months off, or yeah, I think a month off from his job, and travels the world. Starts all the way
Okay.
from South Asia. He basically Australia, Thailand. Then he comes
Mhm.
to India, Nepal, goes to Brazil, some
Okay.
other parts of the world, and then he goes back to the US. And
Okay.
it's a beautiful documentary. This guy is a director himself, so from a movie making standpoint, you think I think you'll
Mhm.
like that movie for
All
sure.
right. All right. All right. Cool, man. Cool.
Actually, there
Cool.
are a
Cool.
bunch of others, but I think these two are very interesting and close to my heart.
Okay. How is this thing Into the Wild? I've heard it is really good.
Yes, it is good, but it's basically you are either like of that genre where you would, I mean, it's based on a book and true story. So there is
Mhm.
nothing from a movie making standpoint. It's showcased very, very well.
Okay.
I've read the
Okay.
book first, so I like the book better.
Mhm.
John, the same guy who's written Into Thin Air, which also is made as a movie called Everest. So
Mhm.
Into Thin Air was the whole disaster of Everest, which was widely noted way back in 90s.
Okay.
John Krokenar, I think that's what his name is, and he actually, the writer himself, was part of the expedition. Though he came out alive, many people died on Everest during that time.
Yeah.
So Into the Wild is written by this guy, same guy, and the book and the movie both are very interesting because you get to know a lot of interesting things, and this is the kind of life a lot of people aspire to now. And the funny part about, like, actually the movie is sad, but it's what the reality is, right? The funny thing about that movie is that I don't know if this is a spoiler, but this is a you watched the movie or what?
No, but I don't mind for spoilers. It's okay.
No, no, it's not a spoiler. It's a given, right? He definitely does not survive. He's
Okay.
basically living on Alaska, in the Alaskan terrains and regions. But there's some research that has come afterwards. There is a reason why he dies, but that reason could have simply been avoided if you would have taken a little bit of an another route to find some food or whatever he could. Like, if you do a little bit of reading on that movie, you'll
Okay.
realize that. But
Okay.
yeah, the movie is all about shunning the society, living on your own, self sustainability, but more from a societal standpoint, not from the whole standpoint of, okay, I'm okay living like a farmer or living like a person out of society, even though I've
Mhm.
taken up
Mhm.
B school and graduated.
Okay.
Uh, this guy is shunning the whole society and trying to live his life because of his obsession against capitalism, fascism, and the whole societal norms. So
I
it's an
see.
interesting watch, one time watch for sure. But the beauty of why this movie is very, very good is because of Eddie Vedder. I mean, all the tracks of Into the Wild, you should give them a listen. I
Okay.
mean, Pearl Jam lead Eddie Vedder, he's written most of the songs and performed on those. So all the soundtracks of Into the Wild are beautiful, just beautiful.
Okay. All right. All right. Another quick question. So, if you were stuck on an island, like Tom Hanks was, and you were allowed to take three things with you, what would these three things be? No cheating. You cannot have. You can have your phone, but you cannot use it to communicate. So no communication tools. It's like
Yeah,
you can
I've
take your
been asked this
iPhone, but
question so many times. I wouldn't take my phone at all. First and foremost, I would take a Swiss knife. That's a given, right? Swiss knife is like if you are stuck in an island and you have no communication. If I was allowed any form of communication, I would still not take a phone. I would, like I said early on, I would take a radio, like a ham radio with me. That way, I can actually communicate across the world. I can directly reach out on frequencies or a satellite phone. But if technology is not allowed, then I would definitely take a Swiss knife with me, a large Swiss knife, of course.
okay,
That's going to definitely help. Um, probably probably a tent, and
okay,
and what else? What else? I guess a few books. I
okay,
don't like entertainment and art is very important in times of isolation. We've realized now. So, yeah. See, if you have a Swiss knife, you could hunt, you could do whatever. Even though I am a vegetarian, if there is no option, you have to eat whatever it comes your way. So, a Swiss knife will always help. And if you like, if you are escape, if you think there is room for escape and whatnot, then I would probably keep a flare gun. That's it. Flare gun I would keep instead
okay,
of a book. A flare gun would replace
okay.
a book, but the bare essentials are much required. I would definitely take those with me. What about
I
you?
agree on you with a Swiss knife. Yeah, I agree with you on a Swiss knife. In fact, I always have a Swiss knife. I have a Swiss knife attached in my keyring. I always
Hmm.
take a Swiss knife with me wherever I go. I think Swiss knives are very durable
Handy.
and versatile both. I have one of the entry level ones, the basic ones, but the knife is amazing. It is great quality, and so is the can opener. So uh, when you see the coconut scene in the movie, when Tom Hanks is hitting the
Yeah,
coconut
yeah,
on a
yeah, yeah.
stone with a stone,
He
you just
finds an edge of
realize,
a stone.
you realize, how nature has evolved these things so well. Like an egg, if you realize, you can only break an egg in a very certain way. Like if you have like a crate of 6 or 12 eggs, you stand on it, you can't break it
Yeah.
because that's how well nature has evolved these things, and these knives and tools that we have are our cheat codes. So it's
Yeah.
very important to take a Swiss knife with you. Otherwise, you even won't be able to cut a coconut. And I'll take a Zippo lighter with me for sure because I've heard
I can create, but yeah.
I don't smoke, so I have no idea about lighters. But I have heard Zippos are very durable and they can definitely survive like being thrown on an island or something.
Yeah, if you have the fuel of it, though.
Oh, okay, that's
They
a catch,
require
but
fuel. Yeah.
Mhm. I guess
If
that's the
you
catch. But once you
basically,
get the flame started, once you start burning something,
yeah.
there's no need. If you're on a desolate island, there's no need to put the fire out ever. Just burn something once and
See,
let
it
it
also
spread.
depends if you crash in the water and the lighter then submerges in water, then it becomes a challenge. If not, then it's fine. If you're just dropped off in an island, then it's fine. But if not, then you would be better off with a regular lighter because even if it is been in the water, it will light for sure. Zippo, what happens is Zippo is just got some little bit of fuel in it, which
Okay.
is basically filled. If you have a fuel bottle with you, then nothing like it. But if you don't, then the
Okay.
life or longevity of a Zippo is much lesser as compared to a normal
Oh.
standard full lighter with gas in it. That will probably last you more, like in terms of weeks. They'll last you 2-3 weeks for sure. This one Zippo lighter will
Okay.
last you probably
Okay.
for 10 days.
Mm.
So yeah. So next time
That's
when you are
interesting.
stranded, make
That's
sure
something
that
I
you
didn't
choose
know.
the normal lighter. Yeah. What's the
Yeah,
third
my
thing?
plan would actually be to. Okay, third thing. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about the third thing. I guess a third thing would be Odomos for sure.
Oh man, you Odomos. I don't think mosquitoes is going to be a problem for you that much as. But yeah, who knows? The but
Yeah,
one thing
like
I chose. One thing I forgot. Like if it's a beach only, then I'm good because I can fish. But if not, if it is like if there is like forest or areas where trees or plants or crops could go, I would probably carry a bunch of seeds along with me, like whatever, like a huge
makes sense.
stockpile of seeds. Then
Makes
I
sense.
could survive however I want, even if I don't have meat or whatever other food
Makes
to
sense. Makes
eat.
sense. So I guess my plan would be to set a fire on these tree barks and fallen down leaves and like cover the whole perimeter of the island. So make a huge fire that like it's definitely notable. It's definitely notable.
Yeah, but you should probably light up the place when somebody is able to view it. Like if somebody is in the vicinity or who can see it. Otherwise, it will go to waste. Like people might
See,
not see it.
I think if you can build a fire big enough, which shouldn't be a problem once you get like some fire going. And since it's like a desolated natural place, I'm sure there would be a lot of wood, a lot of dry leaves around. I think if you like, let's say in this case, in Tom Hanks' case, if he got the whole perimeter of the island, the whole beach lit up, I think it would be big enough that like all of a sudden everyone would start noticing. Like it would be visible from the ISS. Like people would be like, this weird corner of the
I
Pacific
don't think
Ocean has
so.
a lot of smoke coming out. Like there is something wrong here. Like I'm sure Greta Thunberg
Yeah,
would be like, we need to go and check out this place. There is something wrong here. There's a lot of pollution coming out.
possible.
Could be, could be. You never know. So yeah, man. I think that is
Okay,
all from my
yes.
side.
I think so too. It was brilliant. I mean, I think this is good that we did it. After a
Yeah,
long time, I've actually done something like this.
yeah,
So
yeah.
thanks so much for inviting me on your podcast. And I hope to see it or listen to it soon when it's live.
Yeah, man. Yes, yes, yes. All right, man. Thanks a lot for coming. Bye
All
bye.
right.
Take care.
Thank you. See you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.